John, you're a lawyer, aren't you? That's your training.
I think so, Michael.
Yep. It's the court system's meant to be representative of us, isn't it? I mean, that's the history of it. Is it not? Or is it just
I think so.
Is it representative of just a few people?
Well, I think juries, the notion of being judged by a jury of your peers is certainly where it was in alignment with the great unwashed, and you get judged by your peers. But in relation to the application of the law, I'm a bit of a black letter law person. I think that the law as passed by our Parliament, for better or worse, should be applied in accordance with its literal meaning.
Right. So if you steal stuff, you're meant to be punished for it.
Exactly.
Well,
and as to the punishment, juries don't, of course, they don't come up with sentencing. That's for the judge.
Yeah, I'm interested though. There's no jury. The district court doesn't tend to have juries. Very special circumstances. Offences like this don't have juries, so it's down to a judge. I know a judge has got sentencing guidelines. They emanate all the way down for the Supreme Court. But how much latitude does Judge Gilas have on Thursday?
Not sure, I'm afraid. No expert on that.
Okay, all right. You don't have a particular view on what you think a reasonable or just outcome would be?
Yeah, I wouldn't put Gorries in the slammer.
No.
So that really just comes down to whether she is sentenced at all, or whether she's convicted or discharged without conviction.
That's right, yeah. All right, now, moving on, you have cast judgment, though, on something else in your latest Substack article on the head of Sport New Zealand, Raelene Castle. Before we get into that, she's the Greek Chief Executive of Sport New Zealand. She was, now, let me get this right, she was head of New Zealand Rugby Union, is that right?
No, she was the head of Netball New Zealand.
Netball, that's right. And then she headed across the Tasman.
Yeah, that was her. Netball New Zealand was her entry into the big time sports administration. Then she popped over to the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, the so-called doggies in Australian NRL rugby league club, and was the first woman indeed to be the chief executive in Australian rugby league club. Her reign there was defined by underachievement on the part of that football team. She then went to she became the head of the Australian Rugby, that's rugby union, and that tenure was characterised by quite a bit of public controversy involving Israel Folau, who was a member of the Australian rugby team, who she removed from that side because of his expression of his Christian beliefs that people who are homosexual go to hell, and she wrecked the finances actually by severing a long-standing and particularly lucrative relationship with Fox Sport for the televising of Australian rugby, and for that, she ran out of luck and was removed there, and then popped back into her current role as she bounced back and forth across the Tasman, but she's come back and she's the head of Sports New Zealand now.
Now, your concern, though, is that she has, shall we say, some woke views, and that they are likely to be picked up or are being picked up in her current performance of her role as Chief Executive of Sport New Zealand. What views in particular are you thinking, and what influence do you think that they are currently having at Sport NZ? Well,
she's become embroiled, albeit she hasn't commented publicly, in this debate about in essence, the ability of biological males, but trans women, so-called, to participate with women in sport the rubber hits the road, particularly in relation to contact and even combat sports, and it's part of the debate about the culture wars, I suppose.
So, in essence, we're talking about trans men or trans women.
Well, trans women, yeah, it's a.
I don't know what the
trans women, biological.
Is it trans? Is that the proper term? I've never quite got it. So, trans woman is a man who has translated themselves into a woman. Is that right?
Yeah.
And at the moment, in most sport, John, at an international level, and World Athletics, World Swimming now, are saying men cannot compete as women in those sports because of the physiological advantages that they have. But you're saying that we have still got more of a problem at a community level. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's Raelene Castle is holding the line on that. I don't think we should be under any illusions. When we're talking so-called recreational sport, we're talking everything that is other than professional sport. So we really are talking, senior women, club rugby, everything else along those lines. It's not just, a 6-year-old bull rush at the local primary school.
So, and what is the position of Raelene Castle as head of Sport New Zealand on this particular issue?
The guidelines, the currently promulgated guidelines, are such that the emphasis is on inclusivity. That trans women, biological males, should be able to compete. That's the gist of what she thinks. So the emphasis is on inclusivity over what some would describe as fairness.
Right, but and where this all strikes politics is that the government and part of the coalition agreement, I think, they were looking at making sure that there was a clear separation of transgender athletes from grassroots competitions because they recognise unfair. I'll come to that in just a second, my own personal experience with that. But National and New Zealand First had that as part of their coalition agreement. They've now received, as I understand, advice from Sport New Zealand, heralded, if you like, put all together by Raelene Castle. And now, do you detect some backsliding from the government on this particular issue?
Yeah, I don't think Chris Bishop wants to engage with this debate. He's taking a so-called watching brief. I'm not quite sure what that means. It might just mean that you just continue to watch women getting injured by dudes, but it's not clear. It's not clear. I mean, you either have to call it or you don't. It's not really something that is amenable to a watching brief.
No, and just to explain to people who are listening to this, Chris Bishop is also the Minister for Sport and Recreation. So he has a clear policy role and also a funding role in that particular portfolio. He's always been a liberal lefty, has Chris Bishop. One would assume that his natural inclination is not to do anything. Have I got that wrong or right?
Oh, that'd be my read. I haven't spoken to Chris about it or seen anything, but I think they just prefer to avoid these somewhat contentious topics.